Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree, and welcome to my favorite video of every year to film. It is my favorite books of last year, so of 2024. I'm so excited to talk to you about these. I had an okay reading year. I didn't get as many 5 stars as I think I had in the past. I had really read through a lot of the books I was super excited about, and so this year I was kind of getting to ones I hadn't heard as much or were just not, I guess, 5-star predictions in my head, but I do have a stack of 10 to talk to you about. I don't have them in any particular order. I just have what I know is my top book of the year because it, to me, just stands out as the book I keep going back to over and over again. So without further ado, let's just get into the top 10. So first up, I have a sequel, and that is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This is the follow-up to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Forgot the name there for a second. And this is following Emily and Wendell and their fairy shenanigans they get up to. They're both scholars, and Emily Wilde is like trying to make a encyclopedia of fairies, and the first one kicks off where she goes to a town and she's trying to learn about the fairies there, and things just start going wrong when her colleague comes, Wendell Brambleby, and he comes and things just go from there. And it's a really fun, like kind of very slow burn romance, and I just love it. It's like a cozier fantasy, but I wouldn't say it's wholly cozy fantasy because there are some like kind of scenes that are a bit darker. But I think the thing I love about this is it blends like the kind of sinister fairy lore with this cozy feeling, and I could not love Emily and Wendell more. Like, I love them, and there's a dog companion and there's little fairies that we get to meet, and I ate it up. This one, they're in another city. I believe it was in Austria, if I remember correctly. I read this towards the beginning of the year, and I really liked the way the story was built onto, and the third one should be coming out soon, and I don't know if that will wrap up the trilogy or if it's going to be more books than that, but I just absolutely love this series with my whole heart, and I couldn't put a top 10 without having this one on there because when I think about my favorite books of this year, this one just definitely comes to mind. I just love this series so much, and I can't wait till they're all out and then I can do like a massive reread of them because this is a series I definitely would reread over the years. Next, I have a cozy mystery. It came out this year and I picked it up, and it just turned out to be one of my favorite cozy mysteries. I really like this blend of cozy and fun, and this was a perfect combination of those things, and that's It's Elementary by Elise Bryant. This is, I don't know if it's going to be a series, but it's about a mom who gets roped into being part of the PTA, and she doesn't really want to be there, but one day when she's going, she sees the head of the PTA pulling something out of the school, and it's a very heavy bag, and she's very much struggling with it. And then the next day, the new principal, he goes missing, and she believes that that head mom maybe had something to do with it, and she gets wrapped up in this mystery. And I think it weaved a lot of things together really nicely, and we don't, a lot of times with like cozy mysteries, I feel like we get this cozy feeling, this group of characters that we really love together. And we get this in here, but we also get some like deeper things of what she's going through as like a single mom and raising a child, and just a lot of different aspects to her life I think are explored here in a way that is cozy and wholesome, but also gets a little deeper than I think sometimes cozy mysteries go. And it was fun like Finlay Donovan without being like over the top like Finlay Donovan, so I think it just did this perfect blend of cozy and fun for me that I really liked it. And I liked the whole progression arc of the story, and there's kind of different mysteries along the way, and I would definitely take a sequel from this. I don't know if it's going to be a sequel or if it's just going to be standalone, but if it was a series, I would definitely continue on. I absolutely loved it. It is one that I think I will refer back to over and over again, and it's one that I think I could highly recommend to a lot of people. I think it has a lot of mass appeal. And then in a different direction, I want to go to the horror direction, and that is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wong. And this is a literary horror that's following the beauty industry, and we're following our main character as she is kind of trying to find her place after an event occurred at the beginning. I don't know if it's part of the synopsis, so I don't want to tell you, but oh, okay. So yeah, so she is struggling when her parents are left in a very bad space after an accident, and so she's just doing anything she can to try to make some money to pay for her parents like hospital stuff, and she gets wrapped up in this like beauty store that lets her also get like experiments done on herself, and she's trying to sell these products, and it just talks a lot about the beauty industry and also gets weird in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I really liked it. I think our main character is so interesting to follow because while a lot of the things in the story she just kind of lets happen to her, she also is just kind of naive, and so you get to like watch all these events unfold in front of her, and you get to be kind of in the know when she's in the know, and I really like that. Like, it's just a very sinister underlying tone, which I really like. I like when a horror is kind of under the surface, like not in your face horror, and I think this did it really well. And I don't tend to love literary horrors, but this one I think blended that horror and literary in a way that really worked for me. A lot of times I think I find literary horror leans too literary and it's too slow and there's not enough tension because I'm left just feeling like the horror comes out at the end. And this does ramp up to the horror, but I think that the tone of it felt horror the whole time, and that's what really drew me in. I just had to know what was going on with this beauty store and how things were going to end up for her, and I really, really loved it. It was one that I can't stop thinking about after reading it. I constantly like think about the events in the story. I don't know if it has mass appeal for everyone. It's a little weird, but I think it just does this blend of horror commentary really well, and I really loved it. Next, I'm going to talk about a series as a whole, and I know technically I should be putting them in their own spots, and this would be going over 10, but in my head, it's the series as a whole, which I read all this year, so, and it's, you know, my list. I can do what I want. So, we have the Davad Trilogy. The first is City of Brass, and then we have Kingdom of Copper, and then we have Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. Oh, I'm throwing them. I read City of Brass in January of this year, and then I immediately in February read Kingdom of Copper and Empire of Gold back to back. I think I'm just going to hold up the first one in the series just so that I'm not having to hold up all of them. This is a very slow political type fantasy story set in like ancient Cairo, but then we are transported to this world that is adjacent to Cairo, and we are in a world of jinn, and there's Afrits, and there's all these different kinds of mythical creatures, and we are following Nari as she's pulled into this world that she's never been before. She is someone who lives on her own and is trying to make her way in the world, and then she's thrust into this new world with a guy that somehow pops like up around her, and so we're following her and him as they make their journey, and stuff just goes on from there. We follow multiple perspectives as well. This is not just like a one perspective story. And the thing that blew me away about this series is this was a 4-star, a really solid start, but it's one of those series where I don't usually recommend, like, if you felt good about this one but you didn't like love it, I highly recommend reading these because I feel like she just ups her game in the rest of these books. I believe this was her first novel, and these ones you just see like all the things she's been laying out expand over the series, and we get to see just so many sides of a political system. The thing I left this book feeling was I didn't know who to root for. I didn't know who was good, who was bad, like what political leanings we were supposed to be excited about or worried about. And I think that's what she did so well, is that every character and every like group of people have their reasonings for why they're doing what they're doing and why they believe in what they do, and you kind of see like the merit and the bad things behind both and how it's all so complex. She just makes such a complex political system, but also in a way that I think can be a little confusing because you don't know what's going on, but not in a way that felt overwhelming. I did end up looking up a little bit more about the different factions, which I believe in the second book she has like a breakdown of them, and I think that was really helpful to read like a breakdown of each different group of people, because that's the only thing that is a little confusing about it. But oh my gosh, did I fall in love with these characters and the way the story was ending. Like, I had to know what was going to happen. And it's not a fast story. It's very character driven. If you like a big, strong plot, I don't think that these books will necessarily be for you. But if you like a slow character story with all kinds of elements, political intrigue, and world building, I think that these are so good. And I had unhauled this book originally thinking that I wasn't going to like it because I'm not a very big high fantasy reader, but I can like it on occasion. It's just like hard to know which ones are going to be for me. And this was definitely for me. If you have any recommendations that are like this series, please leave them down below because I would really love to give more bigger fantasy a try. It's just that a lot of times, I don't know what it is in them, but they just feel slow and I don't know. I truly don't know what it is about high fantasy that I don't love because I love a lot of other fantasy. But whatever is in this, if you have recommendations that is like this, please leave them for me because I would really love to read more. So next I have a horror, and that's the Reformatory by Tanana Reeve. This is her newest release. It came out this year or last year. No, I think it came out last year. And well, technically we're in 2025. So it came out in 2023, and this is a haunted house type horror set in the Jim Crow South, and we're following two perspectives. We're following a boy who is helping his sister from a young white boy who is trying to push himself on her, and he kicks him, and then he is sent to this reformatory for like boys that they're sent to work, and there's a lot of horrific things that happen there. And then we're also following his sister as she's trying to get him out of this reformatory and trying to look for ways to save her brother because he is wrongly put in this place. And that is what happens to a lot of the boys that go there. They are sent in for very minor things and horrific things happen to them. And so she's learning more about that. And also it's just about her journey and learning who she can trust. And they have a father as well who stood up to a lot of the white people in town. And so they came after him and he had to flee. So they are also dealing with that of why her brother is getting such harsh punishment as well, because they are trying to like lure her father back. So we're dealing with a lot of things in here, and I think the way that she weaved in the historical horror of the times, but also with this haunted house story and the ghosts as well, I think it was just so well done. It is a book that is full of trigger warnings, and if there's things that you're worried about, it's probably in here. It can be very bleak at times, but there's also just so much hope in here, and I think that's the thing that Tanana Reeve really does well, because I also read The Good House this year, and while it wasn't the top 10, it is also in like my top favorite. She just makes a complex horror that really makes commentary on our society and also brings the horror to life. She can really write a horror scene, and I loved this. I think it was so good. Like, tension she had throughout the whole book was perfect. Everything about it was perfect. I truly have no notes for this. It was great, and definitely in the top 10 for a reason. So then we have another fun mystery. I'm so happy I got to some fun mysteries this year. I'm looking for more of them, so if you also have more recommendations for them, please let me know. This one is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. This was a new release in 2024, and it was so fun. We're following a sister who has a writing career, and she wrote a story about her like ex-boyfriend. They had like a whirlwind romance, and she wrote a book about their time solving a mystery, and he has since blackmailed her to pay him because she used his like name and everything in it. So she's been trying to get rid of him for a while, and they're on this book tour in Europe with her sister, who also is like kind of her manager, and he starts getting death threats, and they are trying to figure out who it is. And as she's also wanting to off him in her book, in her last book, she's trying to like off his character so that she doesn't have to work with him anymore. And so it just gets really funny. It's very like meta. It is like talking to the reader about its tropes and things like that. And so I think it's really fun. I really like when books do that. And I think this was just such a fun time. I read it in like the summertime. It was a perfect summer book, and it just made me smile and made me happy and made me laugh out loud. And I really need that sometimes. So I don't know. I think this could have mass appeal as well, but I think that mysteries are hard to sometimes mass recommend because of like the twists and turns. Like, this is not that like twisty, I think. It's more just fun and a good time, and it gives me Finlay Donovan vibes, which I'm always chasing that. So yes, I really liked this. I definitely top 10. I think about it a lot, and I would definitely continue on in the series. This is a book that a lot of people have loved, and I just now got to it, and that's A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a retelling of Dracula, and we're getting letters from Constanta, who was his first bride, to Dracula, but he is not named as Dracula. He's left unnamed throughout the story, and we just get her whole life with him, and it's a look into like a toxic relationship and a look into abuse, and also this like tangled mess of emotions that she feels, which comes from the abuse. Also, there's like a found family slash like love in this. It's polyamorous as well, and it was just such a good time. I think the format of writing it in letters was so good. I didn't know how I would love reading an epistolary novel. I did read the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society, which I believe, it's been a long time, but I believe that was also epistolary. But on the whole, I don't know if letters work as well for me as I want them to, but this was just perfectly timed to each letter, revealed just a little bit more. Yeah, I loved the journey of Constanta and just wanting her to have better, and seeing this slow build of what a abusive relationship can look like, and how, like, at the beginning he uses her in a vulnerable state, and so she feels she owes him all these things. It feels very accurate to how abuse can start, and how there's always this question of like, how did you get here kind of thing. And I think this shows that really well, of how this slow build of control has happened. And I found it really powerful and relatable to me, and I really enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend. I know people have been shouting from the rooftops about this, and I'm late to the game, but you can add my voice to the shouts. We have 3 more books. This one is a weird book that I never thought would really be for me, but I've heard so many people like it and I had to give it a try. That's Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is a weird little book. It's got a locked room murder mystery, sci-fi, necromancers, and space. It's got a lot of humor, and it's written in just like kind of a strange way, where it's kind of stream of consciousness in some points, but then also there's parts where they're talking direct to you using the second form, and it's just so interesting. Like, the way this is written is like nothing I've read before. We're following Gideon, who is part of the Ninth, which there's all different like planets, and so their planet is necromancers, and Gideon just wants to get out. Gideon is trying to escape, but she keeps getting thwarted by the princess, Nona, and she hates her with a passion. And Nona gets her to go with her to this first planet, where all the other planets, I don't know if you'd really call them planets, but that's what I'm using. They go to this first planet where they are all going to compete to become a lector, which is like a higher order and fights for the god character, essentially. And while they're there, they're all locked on this planet. They can't get out. They all start dying. They just keep getting offed, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, why people are dying, and then also trying to figure out the mystery of like how to become a lector, because that's like the whole point, is they're competing to find out how to ascend to this lectorhood. And Gideon is hilarious. I love all the scenes in Gideon's head when she's having to fight and she's just like complaining in her head. I really think this kind of humor works for me. And then I also just think, like I said before, it's the most ambitious kind of writing style I've ever read, and I was so confused for a lot of it, but then the payoff is there. The whole time I'm just like, what in the heck is going on here? But then you get to the end and it all comes together in a way that I just think worked so well. And I love Gideon and Nona's like relationship. They kind of hate each other, but they kind of love each other, and just watching like their friendship, I guess, progress throughout the book, because basically Nona's supposed to be the like person, I don't know what they call it. She's like the main person who's competing, but then Gideon is like her sword, so she like has to defend her, and so they have to like work together in a way that they just don't love doing. And I loved everything about this. I loved the characters, I loved the storyline, I loved the way it was written, which usually I don't care that much about how a book is written, but for me, this just was great. So the last one before we get to my top book of the year is snuck in there in December. I read it like really close to the end of the year, and that's why I don't like posting my favorites of the year too early, because this one snuck in. And this is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. I have wanted to read this book for a while, and I had finally picked up from half price like not too long ago, and oh my gosh, this is a literary fiction, historical fiction. So we're following a young girl as she's living in Tehran in, I want to say it's the 1953, yeah. And she is a teenager, and she goes to the stationery shop every day. It's kind of her place that she loves to go to read books and see all the stationery and all this stuff. And she meets a boy there, and they fall in love, and it's their story. You start the book with her getting a call to visit him at a retirement home, and they're in the East Coast somewhere in the US, and we see that they have somehow been separated for years. So we get to learn why he never showed up to their marriage. They were going to get married and he never showed up, and we get to see the story of what happened. And I really liked that this was a romance, but also just a story of a young woman and her journey to adulthood. We really see her from as she's a young, naive kind of girl and into being this 70-year-old woman, and we see a lot of facets of her life, and there's parts in here that I just didn't think we were going to explore. I do think there's just so much that we watch a character go through, and I really like a character story where we kind of get that character's full life. I don't know if it always works for me, but there are just certain ones that really stand out, and this one was that. There's something about the writing at the beginning. The first like couple chapters, I knew this was going to be a 5-star for me, and it definitely was. It is just like a journey of a young woman, really, and a whirlwind romance and growing up and like your first heartbreak and your first love, and I loved it. I couldn't recommend it more. I think in some ways like it's like Black Cake, where we get just like some character story where like you know something in the beginning and you're flashing back and watching their life unfold even though you know what the future holds. I think those kind of stories really work for me, and this balanced that very perfectly. We get a lot of backstory of like her family and his family. While it is in her perspective, a lot of the times there are other perspectives, and you get like just to know everyone on a deeper level, and I really liked that. And we're also in this backdrop of 1953 Tehran, where there is a lot of like political upheaval happening, and there's a lot of tension of where the country's gonna go, and I also enjoyed like seeing that side of history as well. Finally, we have my favorite book of the year, which I coincidentally read at like the very beginning of the year, and you're probably not going to be shocked about this if you've watched my channel because I've talked about this a lot, but that's House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I loved this book. I did not know if I would love this as much as I did because I had read Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I got about 40% through before I DNF'd it, and that was purely because of content warnings. There's a lot to do with like women's bodies and birth and things like that that I was just not in the headspace to read at the time. And I loved her writing, so I wanted to give her another chance, and I read this one and fell in love with it. This is about a girl who lives on the streets. She's with her brother, and she is just working at kind of like a workhouse for women, and she knows that if she stays there, she's just not going to live a long or fulfilling life. And so she finds this flyer that is talking about being a blood maiden for essentially a vampire. There's these houses where they aren't called vampires, but they need young women's blood to sustain them, and she takes this opportunity to become a blood maiden for this house. It's the like most prestigious house, and she goes and she doesn't really know what she's getting into, but she knows that at the end of her tenure there that she will be given enough money to sustain her for the rest of her life, and she will be able to just like live on her own. So she decides the risk is worth it, and we just watch her as she meets the other girls that are a part of this Blood Maiden Society, and we also get to see a slow tension build of like what is going on at this house. We get to see an obsessive relationship form between our main character Marion and Lisette, and I think it's very interesting because you get to see how the other girls in the house like kind of vie for her favor of the head woman, and the complex relationship of this house and how they all need to stay in good favor to be able to continue living the way they are. And then also just like the way they all become obsessed with her is so interesting, and I really liked the dynamics between all the girls, like seeing all that, and I really liked the underlying tension that was building in the actual story that happened. It kind of gets like a bit unhinged towards the end, but I think it was the perfect build in a horror as well. We get this slow build tension throughout the story, and the way it was written was in like this gothic writing, so it just feels dark and gritty the whole time. And then we slowly build into the horror, which for me really worked really well. And it's a short story, but I feel like so much was packed in here, like not a page was wasted in my opinion. I just really love this. It's like one of those perfect horrors for me. Like if you were to ask me how to describe my horror taste, I think that this would sum up a lot of it. So that is House of Hunger, my favorite book of the year. Whoa. Saw that coming. So there you go. They're my top 10 books of the year. I hope you had a great reading year, and please leave me your favorite books down below, or if you have a video as well, please share that. I love hearing people's favorite books. I feel like I get so many good recommendations from them, so if you have them and you want to share, please leave them down below. But if you made it to the end and you don't have anything to share, please leave a blood emoji for House of Hunger or a vampire, either one. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.